Five, four, three, two, one.
Press the wrong button there. Alright, hello, willkommen, bienvenue, konnichiwa, ni hao, jambo, marhaba. Time for the Amish Inquisition yet again. Coming in your ears on the 30th of January 2022, episode 217. I'm Amish Phil.
I'm Amish Ben.
And I'm Amish Matt.
The dwarf, the cripple, and the mother of madness.
Crikey, I'm so slow tonight. Ropey is out.
I know, yeah.
Lummy neck. Anyway, thanks for joining us, everyone. And tonight's guest for 217 is Nick Kenyon from the Pier Hat in Manchester. How are you doing, Nick?
Not too badly.
Very good.
Been
Thanks.
better, been worse.
Sort of
Imagine it's the same for most of us, isn't it?
I would imagine so, yes.
fair to middling.
Fair to middling.
Expression.
I prefer middling to fair, actually. I'm gonna glass half, full kind of a person.
Good.
Yeah. One of our listeners sent us a video of you speaking at some sort of event. Back end of last year? It was about October sometime.
September, I think. Was it late August? September. I think it was early September. Mid-September.
What was all that about?
It was about vaccine passports. What it was a group of people on the left, in inverted commas, had sensed that I might be, possibly from my blog, which is a very small readership, and I've not written on it for a while, but I think they sensed that I might be sympathetic to the cause, if you will, being anti-vaccine passport, which I was. And it took place in the Quaker meeting hall in the centre of Manchester to not a huge crowd, if I'm frank, maybe 100 people or so. And it was just like that. I spoke. Just after that had happened, or just before that had happened, I get this out of the way now, so we don't have any mawkish moments later. But like, my father had just passed away, and I think at the time I really was pretty cavalier about using that in my speech. So I think I got a standing ovation because I touched a chord with the with people with big hearts, put it like that. But I mean, it was what it was. It was still it was as truthful as I could make it. So yeah.
So I'm just trying to think back to that time. If I'm right in remembering, around this time, the autumn, the idea of vaccine passports was floated. And they said, we're going to bring it in at the end of whatever, I think it was the end of October maybe, or the end of November.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking at the time that this sounds like one last stab at coercion to try and push the people who are on the fence over that line to sort of acquiesce to the demands. I mean, what was your feeling at the time? Because I mean, for people obviously who don't know you run a bar in Manchester, so this is very much applicable to your way of life and all the rest of it.
That's right. So like, whatever I say, I guess, regardless of what I perceive to be its universality, it is within the context of my own existence. So you're right. Yeah, I was, bang on the front line, so to speak, using that horrible war metaphor they're so fond of.
Well, there's been a lot of that going on, hasn't there?
Yeah.
Yeah. My feeling was really not one of surprise. I'd been expecting it pretty much. The sort of I'd hesitate to say countercultural elements, but the kind of people I tend to associate with in my day-to-day life and such, we were pretty much sure that something like this was going to happen. In fact, even that the entire point of the thing might well be to get passports in. So it was like, here it comes, just waiting for that penny to drop. There it is. Let's try it now. So it was like that, really, just a sense of the inevitable taking place. So, yeah.
I mean, right, so you were sort of quite confident when you made that speech that this was actually going to go through, vaccine passport?
No, I wouldn't say that. I'd say I was confident that we were going to make one enormous effort to make that so. I actually, as I say, I am a reasonably optimistic person, and excuse me, this stupid alarm. I am a reasonably optimistic person, and my feeling is that they're going to fail. The Tower Tarot card tells us this. You know, the Tower of Babel tells us this. Many of our deepest myths speak to the failure of those who attempt to impose complete control over living systems. It's just one of those, I won't say a standard myth, but it's something I think we feel deep inside ourselves. That doesn't mean, of course, in the process of failing to do it, they don't absolutely fuck everybody up for generations. You know, it's like it's a scant sort of victory. If like, they failed to get vaccine passports through, but now I'm, surviving on a can of rotten tomatoes or something. Maybe been a bit harsh there, but I'm not. It's a bit too extreme, but I think that's the general vibe. Pull everyone down with you, kind of. Well, that's with them anyway. So yeah, I don't necessarily think they would succeed at putting a vaccine passport through. But the Sturm und Drang around it is definitely of huge concern. Yeah.
Totalitarian regimes have come and gone over the course of history, and they're often very damaging. The way I see it is that there's a certain government in the Far East which we seem to be trying to emulate gradually. And it seems like we're on a slippery slope to follow certain ideas, certain approaches of how people can be governed more easily, and some sort of health passport seems like a very useful tool. And this sort of crisis we've been in for the last 2 years has speeded up what's been in the planning for a lot longer. The EU vaccine passport, I can't remember what the actual term was they used for it, but it wasn't meant to come until I think 2025. But obviously when all this kicked off, well, this is a wonderful opportunity to sort of help things along and speed things along. And
absolutely,
we don't know where the chips are going to fall as far as things like international travel. I mean, if you'd have gone back to early 2020 and suggested that there could be some sort of domestic vaccine passport system introduced, most people would have laughed at you and called you a conspiracy theorist, rightly or wrongly. I mean, what's your sort of underlying philosophical reasoning for being against vaccine passports?
Was it Charles Eisenstein said it? Safety third. I mean, I thought about it like, freedom first, compassion second, safety third is the way I look at it. And that is, I think that's my from the hip response to it. If you, on another level, you don't get in the way of the flow. It just doesn't. That's not how it works to me. And that's not how I perceive reality to work. That's not my experience of reality, and that's not what I feel I'm here for. If I am here for anything, that's not, like I say, everything's my context. I will say this, let's coming back to something you said about China. I think China's turn as the evil empire is inevitable. Power, I think, travels west, you know, and it goes round. And I think China essentially is about, you know, unifying itself and then becoming the primary economic mover. I think some people have said that, you know, the center, you know, money, the sense, you know, the financial center will be like Beijing by 2032. I could see that. And there's a whole bunch of thrashing and crying from the West as it tries to resist that inevitability. That is not to say, by the way, that I welcome our Chinese overlords. But no, just before someone said, "Oh wait, he's working for China," actually, it's not that. Look, empires. It's like you said, empires come and empires go, and people still live, and it keeps coming at you. None of this really makes any kind of sense without good metaphysics. That's ultimately where one is at with it. So it comes back to, you ask about philosophy, you're only asking about metaphysics. You can't have good philosophy without metaphysics that makes sense around this. And to me, like I say, life keeps coming. You could call it, maybe it's the Kali Yuga is a good sort of possibility. I'm not necessarily 100% with idealism, you know, Vedantic thought and such, though I am quite partial to it, I must admit, on occasion. But you're here to witness it. It's fucking coming, whatever you do. And you look at, there's the ruins of the Roman Empire, the Greek Empire, previous Chinese empires, ruins all over the place, and people kept having sex, arguing, fighting, doing all the things, living their lives. And so it goes round and round. We just got to live.
I guess the danger is that the tools are a lot more advanced when it comes to creating an empire and then controlling an empire and sustaining one. And this is something that is more concerning, the way technology can be used to suppress populations, whether it's the Great Firewall.
Mm-hmm.
That's assuming we haven't had this level of technology and greater in the past, of course.
Obviously.
I mean, how far down the rabbit hole do we want to go here? It's all cycles, up and down. You don't resist a cycle. You know, you're familiar with Armstrong, right? Martin Armstrong.
Who's
economic confidence model.
No, go on, what's that?
Basically, in short, not being a mathematician myself, he's sort of noted that boom and bust cycles can be essentially looked at through, figured out according to pi. So he sees like there'll be a cycle of boom where people are buying stocks. Then there'll be a cycle, then they'll stop buying stocks and start buying bonds. So it's private confidence, public confidence, private confidence, public confidence. He looked at these, and it's like he comes up with this algorithm, roughly based off pi. Don't ask me to do the maths. Again, there's some kind of expertisism here, but whatever. And he saw that in essence, you know, the inference there is that the Great Depression didn't happen because there was a agricultural or a crop failure. It happened because we were at that point on the cycle, on the model. And he actually went to prison for what they couldn't figure out why he was making money on the stock market. Martin Armstrong, he's a kind of right wing, to be honest. But unfortunately, his politics are awful. He's like a Thatcher friend, but as a mystic, fucking really interesting. You know, you throw the baby out with the bathwater, etc. So we look at that. We can look at astrological cycles as well, and we can also maybe, if we want to sort of like dip our toe into other areas of cycle models, we can look at the way waves behave, where way all of it, everything seems to behave as when we observe it. Anyway, we can get into the quantum fambangle kind of ideas. So yes, technology will make it easier to control. I tend to subscribe to the idea, it's like cosmic whack-a-mole, though. If you bring one thing into existence, you bring its opposite into existence also. So right. If you bring, the total control technology, it also brings with it the concept of complete freedom beyond what we had previously. How that manifests itself remains to be seen in larger populations. That's
Yeah.
what I would say. That's my, I mean, and bear in mind, I'm a schlub. I run a music venue, so I mean, you know, what do I know?
I think we're at a huge disadvantage to people who've been put under the thumb in previous periods of history. For a start, we're completely unself-sufficient.
Yeah, absolutely.
We don't have land. We don't know how to grow. I don't know how to build a fucking house. You know, or we're so reliant on the infrastructure inherent. If we abdicate things like cash and adopt centralized digital currencies, you're a click of a mouse away from being completely turned off from your money supply.
Yeah.
There are so many potential dangers coming over the next 10, 20 years that people are just completely oblivious about. And they just want to go along to get along, and it won't happen to us. And what's on Netflix, you know?
I totally hear you. At the same time, and obviously when we look at these kind of things, we can feel impotent, as if our actions won't have any effect. There's a lot to be said about that, though, as regarding just what actions are that we can take, how much weight they have, whether the small action is actually there's a lot more impact than we would give it credit. There are little things we can. When I think when you say, "Oh, well, you know, we don't have money and such," and we won't, how to put it, yeah, we can be cut off from the money supply, and we're lacking self-sufficiency, and we don't know how to do this and that. What we do find, I think, is that in whatever communities we're able to put together, and the key is community, each of us holds a little piece of a puzzle. Each of us can say, oh, well, I know a little. Actually, you don't know how to build a house. Well, I know how to build a shed. Or someone says, well, I don't know how to salt a fish, but I do. And slowly but surely, we can look maybe to indigenous frameworks, not stealing their shit, not stealing their, you know, we've stolen their headdresses, we've stolen their land, and now we're stealing their, you know, ideas and their metaphysics. But framework-wise, if you look at something like, I'm trying to think of a good example of a particular culture, like a Shipibu gift culture or gift economy, where like actually the way we deal with each other when we're seven, you know, it can be based off, like, say, what we're able to give and offer one another in that sense, not necessarily like a trade or barter, but it's like, you know, getting to know your neighbors is actually a radical act in this time. You know, you go like, you know, it's like, this is where we're at. In this one sense, it's like, oh, fuck, what the hell do we do? Well, just make friends with your neighbor, you fucking idiot. It's not like rocket science, you know? Form a community or made part of, you know, open yourself up to people and what they have to offer, because they're all right. So there's a lot of dickheads around, I know, but even them, they're wounded. We're all wounded. And what do they say? The wound is where the light comes in. So go to where the tension is. If you read tarot cards, you'll note that, like, if you do it well, you go to where the pain is. Okay, so always like try and give the person the worst fucking reading you can, because that's the one, like, looking at like your 3-card spread and be like, where does it hurt? That's where it hurts. And you can sort of apply that to just about everything in life. You ever watched, I mean, obviously some of the things I'm hugely into, do you know Rune Soup? Gordon White and Rune Soup? It's a chaos magic community as it happens, but like he introduced me to an anthropologist called Donna Haraway, and she had this idea which is very similar actually, and it's so strange. It's called stay with the trouble. So when we have things like Black Lives Matter or LGBTQ plus sort of like radical, I say radical, some people it's not radical rights depending on your perspective. What was I talking about? Hold on.
Rune Soup.
Not Rune Soup. What was staying with the trouble? That's one. I totally forgot to stay with the trouble. The opposite there. You can see that, like, rather than kind of engaged in this permanent sort of violent what's the word again? Like attempt to redeem oneself by sitting with people's anger and experiencing rage. All that we can really ever do is be aware of, say, empire, for example, be aware of the suffering that has been caused and let that inform our actions. That is ultimately it. And in that, by that same token, stay with the trouble. Where does it hurt? Where is the pain? It's like if you're going to take a bunch of mushrooms or ayahuasca or anything like that, before you go in there, you're going to say, where does it hurt? Where, like if you do like John Hopkins studies at the moment, they'll run you through an inventory of all the things that are right and wrong with your life. He'll go through it. What's your diet like? What's your sleep like? Who do you know? Who you're talking to? Is anybody pissing you off at the moment? All this kind of thing. And then once you're in there, when the bad trip happens, you go straight to where it hurts. Same thing, same quality. I think it's elegant. Right? You think it's elegant?
How does it apply to the tarot? Because I've never done the tarot. How's it sort of, if you were going to do a tarot reading for me, how would that work?
Right. So there's a lot of different methodologies for reading tarot. The ones that spring immediately to most people's minds are the things that come with the little books. If you buy a tarot deck, and there'll be a little book, and it'll say, this is what this means, this is what that means, this is what this means. Devil's bad, death means whatever it means, new life, etc., etc., all these things. I became interested in a writer called Camellia Elias, and she basically proposed like a Zen methodology of reading. And what this style says is that meaning is context-based, always changes depending on the context that you're in. It's not set. Like, she would say this, because she's kind of like that Zen thing, she'd say this sort of no meaning, nothing exists. I'm not 100% with that, but it's really useful in this sense. And you will basically say everything comes from the question. So the question is your context. So you say, somebody say, oh, well, should I stay with this person or should I leave this person? And you draw 3 cards. And if the devil comes up, for example, using the devil again, it's just an obvious one. It doesn't necessarily mean something bad, or like, oh, this means that this person is going to be committed to the flesh and not to the higher form of love. It means whatever is specific to that question. It changes and shifts. So it's essentially saying what you're looking at the cards and saying, what do you see? Same as you can look at a situation in life. Don't try and read like fucking behind the curtain. Don't try and sort of bring it down. What are they really getting at? Look at what is happening. Identify where the pain is. In tarot, it would be there would be tension in the cards. So you'd say perhaps there might be, you'd look along, if you drew a 3-card spread, you'd look across the cards, you'd try and identify where, just through your eyes, just through what you see. Like if you see 7 swords clustered around, you go, well, that looks a bit sharp and spiky and hard. So that means something there, What does it mean in the context of the larger question?
So do you go in armed with a question like an ayahuasca ceremony?
If one was to come to somebody for a tarot reading, the idea, you want a question. And sometimes when I've done it for people, I've discovered this, they are essentially like, okay, I've got a question. I'm like, well, what is it? Well, I'm not telling you, otherwise that'll prove you that you're just a fake. I'm like, well, I'm not trying to be a fake. I'm not psychic. Do you want your question answering or not? So let's get it out there. We'll work at this and see what it is. And then it becomes apparent. And quite often people already know the answer to the questions they're asking. Quite often. Sometimes they don't. That's when you start to get palpitations and, but yeah.
I know that feeling. When did you get into the tarot then, Nick?
Tarot, not actually supremely long ago. I've been into the into magical consciousness, the occult and such for about probably about 15 years, I'd say, but with increasing intensity. Initially was, you could say tarot in particular. I'd like to, it's better to include it as a larger whole, because once, I wouldn't say I was like, I became interested in tarot necessarily. I was becoming interested in divination and systems of divination. And that essentially came out of, this is where I ruined my credibility, taking lots of psychedelic drugs until...
common theme this, isn't it?
Has that happened before? Is this a constant thing? You keep getting people... Yeah, of course it is. Well, this is a possibility. Why are mushrooms here? Why are these liberty caps growing on our hills? They grow there. It's not... I take great issue with some of the people at Johns Hopkins and such in a moment who are saying, right, look, we think mushroom therapy is really good, but you've got to do it with a trained psychotherapist or a shaman. Now, I get that. Don't get me wrong. I totally understand where they're coming from. At the same time, liberty caps are growing in those fields out there on their hills. There are no psychotherapists in Manchester who are going to recommend I take them or take me through them. There are no indigenous shaman or
Ryan Seven. I think he qualifies as a shaman.
Well, best not. That's a touchy spot for Ryan, isn't it, at the moment? Yeah.
He might. Hey, look. I mean,
I'm being facetious. Sorry to interrupt.
No, it's fine. It's fine. I actually think it kind of keys into what I'm saying in a way, because if I'm getting you correctly, like, it falls to those of us who are interested in this matter to map the territory a bit. I mean, I guess in that Terence McKenna-like sense, you can't be cavalier about it. At the same time, what the fuck are we going to do? And wait for the establishment to allow us to do this, or wait to rediscover indigeneity? We have to rediscover indigeneity and define what that means for us in 2022 in, where you guys, Preston?
Yeah.
Preston. What does indigeneity mean in Preston? It's like, you wait for your doctor to prescribe mushrooms. Good luck, But to come back to it, what the initial question. It's like being a musician, trying to figure out. When I initially went there, I was very depressed, nihilistic, atheist, and they don't necessarily go together, but in my case, they did. And
nihilism and atheism are like hand in glove.
Well, yeah, I suppose actually, yeah.
So I think some fragment of my childhood memory had remained, and I embraced one last effort to try and sort of rekindle something before I tried to persuade myself I was Ian Curtis. And instead I got this an amazing life-changing experience, I suppose, a religious experience.
Yeah.
That sort of changed my perspective as an artist. And of course it brought certain things. It's a long story, and a lot of things happen along the way, but it brought certain ideas into sharp focus. Certainly became interested in magic. Is this, I certainly always, like a hardcore atheist would say, you just want it to exist. Well, yeah, I did. Of course, I wanted it to exist. I found it illuminated my very being to conceive that magic might be real, and there might be something numinous to life. Although, by the way, the same thing, they never really think to apply that's not fair to say, but often people who use the argument fail to apply the same reasoning to themselves. Like, they also equally want there to be nothing. It's like, oh, you just want to comfort yourself. Oh, I'm sorry, you don't. I get it. You love being in discomfort. I see that in you. But where was I?
You got into magic, and was that so from the psychedelic experience? What was your journey into esoterica?
Yeah, it throws so much into question. It basically taught me, if one thing I took away from the life-changing side of it was that I was too arrogant to presume that I knew anything. And I certainly couldn't assume that I knew enough to kill myself. That was insane. Like, I don't know anything. And therefore you become interested in the stuff that's sort of, oh, well, that's not real. you push at it a bit, pull at the threads, and then at first it seems to be real. Then you convince yourself that it is real, but you never stop having awe at things which are fantastic and bizarre to everyday life, everyday reality. Yeah.
What instrument do you play, Nick?
I am. Well, I play my own mind, man. I'm a singer-songwriter. I sing, I write songs, I play the guitar to back myself up. I like playing with bands, but it's the bottom line is I don't really. Recent times, since my last band went kaput, which was about 18 months ago. I mean, we trained them up. We spent a couple of years practicing, and they both fucked off to Mexico to form an ayahuasca retreat of all things. I was just like, what is the point of doing? Back to square one. Find more people, do it again. No, and also, I don't know how universal I am in terms of my appeal. Like obviously, someone like John Lennon's great appeal was his universality. And then that was sort of torpedoed, I think, once he met Yoko. I don't think anything bad about her in per se, but I think that aspect of him, the thing that made him wonderful and amazing, was like, oh no, now I'm going to make every song's going to be about my struggles and my anger and the way it's like, no, not interested. It's like, give me the thing that's beautiful. He couldn't see what was beautiful about his own talent. But the thing that what I noticed in myself, and this certainly came about as my interest in in magic grew and its interest in me grew, was that most of my songs were about the same thing, and that was essentially trying to bring a hazy female shape just out of sight into closer focus. Pursuing this feminine thing, this energy, if you like, this woman. Oh, you see it over and over again, like, oh, why is this happening? I guess I've got some sort of issue. Have you read Robert Graves' The White Goddess?
No.
Right, so I mean, Wicca used it as kind of, I'm not Wicca, I should say that quickly. I'm not, and also I don't denigrate anyone who is Wicca, but I think Gardner used it, and a lot of neo-pagans use it as a basis for some of their thinking. But what really interested me about it was this idea that was poetry, true poetry, was something separate from poetry with a small p. And for a poem to be a poem, it had to be a paean to the goddess, like which Graves identified as being like a universal female godhead that was pre-Asian invasion, matriarchal, and was pushed west through across Europe over generations, centuries, millennia, eons even, and it finally into Spain, to Ireland, through Wales into England, and it died out finally with the Christians stamping on these things.
The divine feminine, you would say.
Yeah, the divine feminine, exactly. And he would say that it also had to, so you had to A, worship that, or glorify that, and B, or address what happens next, e.g. beyond the veil when you die. So if it's not it's not actually a poem unless it does those things. Now, actually, when you look at some of the great poems, you actually, okay, the ones that make you shiver, they give you the goosebumps. You see this sort of thing happening. You can even see it in like some of the Beatles songs and stuff. It's like, oh, wait a minute. This kid keeps, it's Lennon's mother. Okay, fine. It's his mother. He's bringing it back to himself. Again, like I say, torpedoing the universality. But I started to get interested in this. Like, okay, I've sort of done this myself for a while. And then later when I really got into magic, first through some meetings with some Babylon heads in Manchester, you aware of the Red Goddess, Peter Gray?
Oh, I was thinking Mick Hucknall.
You know, Mick Hucknall's got a very modest Facebook presence. Have you ever been in his face?
No.
A friend of mine who plays gigs at the Pier.
How do you have a
Pier Hut.
modest Facebook presence?
It's honestly, it really, he went up in my estimation because it's a friend of mine, an older chap who was he was one of the people who was at the Free Trade Hall when the Sex Pistols played. And,
Wasn't everyone at that gig?
they were all at that gig. Yeah,
Yeah.
he was really there.
He was
though.
definitely there. Confirmed.
He wasn't there. He was. I choose to believe him. It's better this way. And he's friends with Mick Hucknall, and I don't really understand it because I was able to see him comment on Mick Hucknall's Facebook page, and it's all very sort of like nice one. You know, just he's got like 45 Facebook friends or something, and it's so weird. Honestly, it's something you should check out. Maybe it'd be difficult to find, but I'll try and find some evidence of that for you at some point.
Yeah, send us a link. I want to friend him and get him on the podcast.
Yeah, screenshot it. Screenshot some of the combo.
I think he's quite a private man. I think that it's almost like somebody's dad or granddad has just discovered how to use Facebook, and it's kind of like, how does this even here's a photograph of me with some of my friends, and someone's like, oh, really nice picture, Mick. Like that kind of so weird. Anyway,
it's funny when that the Cosmic Tusk has just got Dr. Chandra Wickramasinghe on Twitter,
right?
And he's telling people to like go easy on him. He's not sure what he's doing, and he's like 100 years old.
Yeah, he's 80. He's like 90. That guy now.
He is. Yeah, he's knocking on.
Yeah.
It's nice, isn't it, in a way? But if it wasn't for the fact that, well, the obvious downside of Facebook's kind of corrosive influence on just about everything.
Yeah, what do you make? What do you make of Zuckerberg's next move, the metaverse? Have you looked into that at all?
I presume you saw the opening advert for it. You must have seen it. The video.
You're trying to watch telly, do we?
Was it on telly?
He had a 20-minute intro video as to what it would. Yeah, you gotta watch it. Oh my god, I can't believe you mentioned it and not seen it. No, right. Basically, he it's so repulsive. He's kind of so naturalistic, and he comes in. He's like, I'm gonna choose what I'm going to wear today in the metaverse. And he like chooses like a shit cartoon version of himself. And he walks in, and his friends like they're playing poker in the metaverse. It's all like it's virtual world, and like. One of them's a robot. Hey, Mark, it's me, Danny. I'm a robot. And someone is like, I'm the multi-gendered sort of tentacular kind of being and stuff. And it's, wow, awesome. Hey, and he says, like, to the robot person, I thought I was supposed to be the robot. He says, robotic.
Oh,
so
God.
Yeah, I thought I was supposed to be the robot. and then he then it goes a bit further, and they like, hey, then they like connect with somebody who's elsewhere on the planet, and they're like, hey, Mark, we've just come across some awesome virtual art. There's this like shit 3D art thing on this wall.
NFT.
Like, they're all going, whoa, it's awesome. Then one of them goes, oh wait, look, it's fading away. He's like, don't worry, I'll add some more sponsorship chips so the art won't fade away as quickly.
Oh,
Never.
Yeah. It's like, don't. And the other highlight is when he says, you can have your own completely inspiring view out of your window, and you can choose anything you like. It's like, a mountain, the Swiss Alps. It's like beautiful. Even though anyone with like half a soul, this is why I say why I'm optimistic. They're also like spiraling into kind of a total irrational. A madness, it's the decreasing sense of awareness of what they're doing, and it's like, when someone's saying they're not even aware of like basic fucking tropes, and the guy's a nerd. He's not, some cyberpunk dude kind of twitching on the floor with a brain dance taking place, like oh, it's a totally inspiring view. And it's like, what? No, it's preposterous. Really watch that. Oh my God, it's hard to watch. It's also stupid. It renders stupid.
Yeah, you and me might think it's stupid, Nick, but I think we're in the minority. I think most people are going to lap this fucking turd show up.
I think a lot,
it's
you
gonna
know,
love it.
it's just, I suppose it's another level of just checking out, isn't it? You mentioned Netflix and all the rest of it.
Oh, escapism.
Yeah.
It's like...
Yeah. Escaping your Soma, isn't it? It's another way of putting it.
Yeah,
but
it's Brave New World.
a little bit. But I suppose the other thing as well is, you know, how do you feel that's different towards like World of Warcraft or Second Life or things like that? What's the difference between that and the metaverse, for example?
I mean, World of Warcraft's awful. I mean, all those they're all terrible ways of spending time. They have that thing, don't they, in Chinese prisons where they make people build up characters for World of Warcraft and sell them to Western teenagers.
Never.
Yeah. That's the thing. I mean, that's not. It's like, how do you think that's different from having your your little finger cut off? Is it better to have your little finger cut off with a pair of scissors, or is it better to have your nose smashed in with a hammer? I mean, I don't know. It's like I think computer games can be good for bringing people together sometimes. There's no doubt about that. And there's nothing. And there were that thing that people gathered round the couch, played GoldenEye.
Yeah. It was Mario Kart in our day.
Yeah,
Mario
Kart,
Kart, yeah,
Superstar,
or,
International Superstar Soccer.
Yeah.
WWF at the time, No Mercy.
Nice.
Honestly, they absolutely never bettered a wrestling combat system in console form.
I think the difference it's like it's pre-internet, isn't it? So you still had to have a physical, not necessarily. You had to have some people around in person, didn't you? I guess that's the thing, isn't it?
Some of my the memories of me laughing the hardest, like laughing myself to tears, is of us playing Mario Kart.
Yeah,
and getting drunk when we were 16 or 17 or something.
Yeah.
You know, I would just howl with laughter because it was just hilarious. I'm not going anywhere with that.
There were good times, but like I say, I think computer games, certainly from the perspective of a magical perspective, because meditation is such a huge part of magic, and I guess art as well, as I've come to see they coincide really. And maybe I'll come back to what I was saying again in a minute, but like computer games actually interfere with that. If you play something where you're there's a lot of stuff moving around on the screen, it's like the mind, wherever it is, can only deal with one alternate universe at a time. So you close your eyes and you get all the fucking stuff moving around that what's this? It's like Golden Axe, like no, or like whatever the fucking thing is these days, and Diablo,
Fortnite.
There is that side to it, and I do think though, as well that like I mentioned Dungeons and Dragons when we were off air. I'm happy to mention it again on air. By the way, I don't think there's a stigma with it these days. I think we've come fiercely into the light. They've proven that we're not sad, and we are actually quite on it now in many ways. Culture has proven it. As you've seen, Vin Diesel, he likes Dungeons and Dragons.
Does he? Right.
Massive sign of, I don't know, it's cool, isn't he? Right?
Definitely cool. And Graham from Grimerica, he's a big D&D fan.
I mean,
he's cool.
It was always something that interested me, but I just never got into it. Maybe I could just never convince you to play D&D with me.
Yeah, it's not a solo game, is it?
No.
It is not a solo game. It is storytelling. And it comes back to, the actual kind of D&D I like to play these days. I like a little bit of the game side of it too. It's like, it's got to be harsh. And then a lot of people are like, it moved to a lot of iterations role-playing games and went into sort of like a narrative phase. Everyone was sort of telling each other stories and validating each other. And yeah, we're all working together to create a narrative and aping other narrative systems. It's like, no, sometimes you roll your character and you're dead because rocks fall on you after 15 seconds. Why did you die? It wasn't meaningful. No, it wasn't. You just fucking died. Oh, you failed your poison. Save versus poison. You're dead immediately.
Yeah.
Deal with it. Suck it up. Anyway, that's a different story. That's a different podcast, actually. But storytelling, though, it does come from storytelling. And that is, when I said before, when we try to find indigeneity and trying to map the territory, it's like trying to find stories to tell that are fucking interesting and make us come alive, make us live, I think. Which is why precisely part of the problem with the whole vaccine passport thing is that, it's a terrible story. No one wants to be part of that. And it is a story in as much as it's a narrative that people form. Plague is a narrative. It goes back, everyone knows. It's a bit like that predictive programming thing. Everybody knows what the plague story is. Oh my God, quarantine, we got to start. Oh my God, it's spreading quicker than we could ever imagine.
It's airborne.
Yeah, that was the one.
It's gone airborne. It's mutated. It's taken it. Oh my God, it's hemorrhaging. Mom. This is before COVID. This is just like in fucking films, loads of films, computer games, books, like the Bible. It's like fucking. It's a plague narrative. And people are caught in that story right now. That's why they can't. How do they get out of it? They don't know how to get out of it. No one knows how to end it. Because it's, where is it? How do you end the plague story? Oh, the Great Fire of London. You got to burn the fucking city down to end the plague, which is totally mental when you think about it. The plague that, devastated the world, the bubonic plague, ended during the Great Fire of London. And that was it, because all the rats that had the plague were in that one place. The end. Next. But it had to be an event, something to...
Well, like a party in lockdown, maybe. That ended the current restrictions, didn't it, quite well?
Well, you see, we're controlled by these elite fuckers who make the rules and who are just totally... All they're concerned about is keeping their job.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
So if circumstances change and they've been found to have been partying when they should not have been...
Yeah.
Then maybe they will bring forward easing restrictions to get them off the fucking front page. And they'll just drag it out. They'll drag it out for as long as they can till either people get bored or another war starts, because that'll take people off.
Oh, God, that's the other thing, isn't it?
Well, yeah. Well, exactly. That's part of the cycle thing. Going back to Armstrong again, he basically seen us going into a war cycle with the risk increasing. He's been saying this for, this is, again, not a surprise. From March going up, increasing risk, mainly because he sees the failure of the European project, like the devastation, economic devastation in Europe. And it's like, well, they needed this some event to try and bind people together and get them to accept a different kind of, way of dealing with fiscal realities. And it's not really working out like that because these people don't seem to understand, again, that open systems aren't the same as closed systems. It's simple. It's like if you go into a laboratory, you take X number of variables and you say, right, this is how this feather falls. You can say, with reasonable degree of accuracy, this is how it falls. You take it out into the real world, you can't make that same adjustment because there's an almost infinite number of variables acting on it. This is why the problem with models.
I don't know. Well, I was just going to say, what about Neil Ferguson? I mean, his track record is sublime, isn't it?
Well, it's just, we're taught to believe these people are actually sort of godlike geniuses, but they're not at all. They are dogmatic media entities, and there's really not much more to it than that because
there's a bit of a dick slinger I've heard as well.
Again, before COVID, a top, I don't know if you've heard Siv Watkins speak, a great microbiologist, just saying, like, look, we look at what is taking place in the microscopic world. Any good microbiologist will say we don't have a fucking clue what is happening. It is too complex. We can take part of it away into a laboratory and make some judgments, and we can make some, we can create things. Same outside of microbiology, we can take things from the physical world, go into the laboratory, and we can create engines. We can create food processors. We can create nuclear bombs. Okay, we can create all these fucking things. But none of those things, despite the fact that they work, should describe reality because they can't possibly, because they are the product of a closed system. It's very simple. And some guy was talking to me in the bar the other night, and he said, "Well," I was going on the same similar sort of line. He said, "It's our best guess." I'm like, "Hey, who's our?" Our being like some little bubble of fucking imperial cunts are sort of like, oh, this is their answer. We're the ones. We're right. This is how it works. Fuck all those brown people. They know that they've got a whole system of things, but that's for them. This is how we work.
Yeah, and if you disagree with us, you should be taken off the internet.
Yeah.
Oh, Jesus Christ. And B, again, our best guess, like, of course, there's a whole different way, many different ways of looking at ecological problems. I think it's fair to say that there are a whole host of ecological problems are at least as bad or worse or different than, say, this insane focus on, carbon emissions. But either way, my point is that we're on we're fucking, anyone can see that we're fucking the world up. You just have to go outside and go, what a fucking ugly, wretched fucking mess. This is your best guess. This is your best fucking guess. I built a food processor, but it also drains all the energy out of the planet. That works. You saying that works? That's idiotic. It's idiotic on an insane scale. And these people are still going with this. Brian Cox comes on television and he's like, he can enjoy the show, and he's like, the universe and the way the planets move can be almost predicted according to the stroke of a clock. And the end of it, and he'll go, but it always fills me with great pleasure to think about how everything is ultimately meaningless. And
oh my God!
Burning out of the universe. It's cooling down, and that's the end. Oh well, see you next week. This is just pure philosophy coming from an inane position.
From a keyboard player, no less.
Yeah, man, he had a hit though, didn't he?
I can't watch him. It's too slow. It's too.
I mean, I watched Wonders of the Solar System, and it's a good 10, 12 years ago, that wasn't it now, I think. But I tried to watch the most recent series. I think I watched one or two, and then I just had to stop because it was so terribly depressing. He was talking about all the stars in the universe slowly running out of energy, basically. And then
it's the same thing. That's his best guess. He doesn't know shit. He doesn't know shit. He thinks he knows everything. He's put on a pedestal, but guess what? He knows shit.
He knows shit. Of course he knows shit. Did you hear when he said that the Hadron Collider proved that ghosts didn't exist?
No.
It's like it proves that ghosts don't exist because it would have picked up their energy signal. It's like, what are ghosts made out of again, Brian? It's like what? No fucking no. Why is that not been asked? That question right there.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
Like, are they heat? A ghost made of heat, Brian? A ghost made of the electric? Can you fucking light a house with a ghost? Like, what are you talking about?
Well, his rationale would be, a ghost will have to abide by the laws of thermodynamics and how Large Hadron Collider can look at these rules, and we can therefore, because the laws of thermodynamics are laws, as in they cannot be broken, they're written in stone. I don't care what you have to say. If it doesn't comply with the laws of thermodynamics, it does not exist. Case closed. Sign me up for season 5.
You're right, but even within that sort of paradigm or that ontology, even within that, it's like it doesn't really hold any weight, because it's sort of like saying, well, what if ghosts were just psychological? Whatever just psychological means. It's like there's no. Do you know what I mean? It's no sense of that. It's like, oh, we're proving they don't exist. What I mean, if they were I don't believe this. What if they were some kind of function? What if they were a trauma that could be repeated, for example, in a person, in someone's biology, or in their in their experiences? I mean, for example, it's like when the Big Bang, for example, and again, I'm using the word example over and over again, but never mind. Like, within the ontology that he puts out there, it doesn't make sense, because, like, if you say eventually, so what, the universe all burns out and there's nothing left and everything's quiet forever and ever, including time, which also stops forever and ever. Don't think about that too much. The time has stopped forever and ever. And how do you create a universe? What are the ingredients, Brian, according to the Big Bang, to create a universe? Well, you need some nothing to begin with. You need 1 gram of nothing, 10,000 tons of nothing, and another infinite mass of nothing. You mix it all together with nothing, and bang, a universe appears. So it's like, the conditions at the end of what he describes the same as the conditions at the beginning.
Yeah,
it's not even remote, even it's simplistic stuff.
I think it was Terence McKenna who put it well. I think he said, "Give me one free miracle, and I'll explain the rest."
Give me one free miracle. I can't. Really, I usually better at doing that impression, but yeah. One free. Oh, no. I'm so used to hearing his voice over music. They ruin it, don't they? It's like they always have somebody playing new age kind of like
panpipes and shamanic drumming.
Progressive psytrance. That's more like progressive psytrance underneath. Like,
What kind of music do you listen to, Nick? Have you got like do you have a preferred genre? Are you like a rocker, or do you like indie, or you sniggered
Hold
then.
the roll, I'll keep the rock, thanks. So music I put on it in the peer hat would be just, I just have to admire it. I don't have to like it. As long as I admire it, that's fine. In my own personal taste, I like stuff that, if it gives me that shiver, the same shiver that I have found myself going back to Robert Graves. I now think there's such a thing as true poetry and the true song, because songs are poetry if they're a song, and I like songs. And don't get me wrong, I like classical music. I like various aspects of world music and different instrumental stuff, but I really get off on the songs. And certain songs make my hair stand on end, and the reason for that is like I think they address that. Certainly something that fascinates me, that maybe it's that universal feminine that's just out of sight. Maybe it's death and what happens beyond it. If it's there, I like it. So I'm not saying that so that crosses multiple genres. I like the Beatles.
Good. Same here.
Goodbye. That was a long-winded way of saying I really, really like the Beatles more than anybody else.
The thing is, it's an easy. People see that as an easy answer, and as a student of songwriting and music, my conclusion is that they cannot be beaten.
They cannot be beaten
when it comes to constructing and writing songs. And if you haven't seen it, Nick, Jordan Peterson was on Joe Rogan, I think, last week.
Oh, yeah.
And
I've not seen it yet, no.
There was a small section, like maybe a 5-minute chunk, where Jordan Peterson starts describing music and what it means to him and how it works and how it describes reality. And it's like, I've never heard anyone sum it up so perfectly.
I'm sorry, I need to end this podcast right now. You have mentioned Jordan Peterson.
Cancelled. Sorry, I forgot you mentioned you were a man of the left. Sorry, I should have referred to him by his real name, the Antichrist, shouldn't I?
He's not. I don't know where you get off of that. I was not warned about this. By the way, anyone who's listening to this, please do not associate me with Dr. Peterson. Okay. Yeah, he's really interesting, isn't he? I mean, it's a shame that I would like to hear what he has to say about it. Actually, he's he's somebody I don't always agree with, but why should I always agree with somebody? That would be weird. And
I think you said that about a lot of people.
Yeah,
I think because we seem to be more divided tribally now since the advent of social media, whereas we seem less, maybe not on the surface, but deeper down, we seem to be less tolerant of opposing views and opinions and experiences than maybe we were. I don't know. I think maybe that's just amplified by social media. I think if you talk to normal people in the flesh, most people are more reasonable, but social media has this trick of amplifying and dividing us.
I think you would say things, not necessarily us, I shouldn't say that, but I think people would say things or do say things on the internet that he would never say to him face to face or whatever. There are a few people, I suppose, that do confront him and stuff, and I've seen some videos of him on campus and things, when people have
Jordan Peterson destroys feminists.
Destroys feminists.
Yeah, and that's
Feminazi. He
and
destroys feminazi.
that's not particularly helpful either, is it? When they
No.
take sort of sound bites and 5-minute chunks from certain things, and I don't think that. And I think I've heard him say that that's not particularly helpful either. No. But this is the thing, isn't it? That I think you can't. People are judged on, you know, like one or two things that they might say rather than on the whole. And then, like what you said, I think he's just as a person, because he's got some, like, you know, what you might call, you know, classic right wing views, but also, you know, he's an addict, isn't he? He admits
recovering.
Recovering addict, so he's recovering addict. And, you know, he's quite open and honest about that. He's open and honest about his depression and his anxiety and stuff and how he medicates that. And I don't think there's a lot of people that would necessarily have that kind of global fame or reach that would necessarily admit that, you know. So I think, you know, he's quite brave in a lot of respects.
I mean, you look at all these kind of mumble sort of tattoo face rappers, guys. I'm sure like, I got a problem with my depression. I got a problem with my addiction. I got a problem. Everything's a problem. I mean, I think it can be a badge and it can be something to win people over. Anything can, as soon as it's in that spectacular, as a situation would put it, that spectacular space where it's like nothing is real. Everything becomes a projection of that reality. It's all, everything is a metaphor for the actual. Just like, oh yeah, John P. I agree with you. I just, whether it's brave or not,
I don't think you can. Sorry, I don't think you can put Peterson in that camp.
No,
from the point of view where he was at the height, I would say, of his power when the collapse happened, and it was pretty bloody. And he nearly, well, if taking his word, I can't take anyone's word but his own, but he was close to death a couple of times.
So he says,
and the death of his wife and all the rest, you know, presumed death of his wife. She pulled through in the end, but
I was going to say, did she die?
A hell of a fall from grace. She was diagnosed with terminal cancer.
Jesus,
and she recovered. I think that was the thing that sent him over the edge with the addiction. And it's a very strange story, and it just makes him more interesting to me. You know,
I think he's a hugely useful and important voice. If anybody is going to be, if like, obviously it's easy for me to be sort of meta and step back and go, well, in the society of the spectacle, the only free choice is the refusal to pay. But yeah, I think it's important. I do want to say something. You mentioned like how how social media has made us more tribalistic, and how we sort of in real life we maybe respond better than we do in those areas. And I think we do. But I'll say this much about myself, and I think it's if it's true of myself, and I don't think I'm super unique in this, unless I'm some kind of emotional like head case failure or something, or just really Cancerian and wet. But like when people, if it's something I hold something dear and they disagree with me, my first instinct, and it is instinct, isn't intellectual curiosity like, oh, why is it you disagree with me? I would love to learn more. It's outrage and a sense of perhaps like kind of pain that something is violated in me. And that is, I think, something where when you look at people right across this, the spectrum, when we're having these debates about vaccines or COVID or what have you, that's the first thing that tends to happen. It's not always that case, but I think that response hides a wound. I think we're all wounded, maybe wounded just by the fact that we have to sort of like form ideas and belief systems apart from any of our experiences to get us through day by day because of the endless ugliness of industrial society, because of how hideous that is. And I think it's really handy. It goes back to what I said before, go where the pain is. It's handy to look at that feeling. I don't know if any of that, I mean, you guys might be better at that than I am. I do my best to sort of like observe it and notice it in myself. I think because it lets me notice it in other people and give them the respect they deserve, even when they are holding what I consider to be hideous opinions, but they're holding them to cover up something else that is real. I mean, I think someone said that the wound is where the light comes through, and although it's recognizing that, I think we can sort of move forward in our interactions and maybe modulate how we deal with people. See themselves and ourselves, and vice versa.
I think you are. I wouldn't say you. I think you're in the minority in that sense, because I'm guessing these things, these opinions that wound you, maybe wound you because they go against some sort of principle that you hold, or some sort of fundamental morality. And the fact is that if you need to think about those things, you have to be a thinking person to derive first principles and morality. And I think the majority of the people are not thinking people, and they don't have principles, and they haven't considered moral, philosophical questions. And they're not doing it to hurt you. It's just clumsy because they haven't had the time, maybe not through their own fault, maybe just because they're busy working parents.
Sorry to interrupt you there, but would you not acknowledge it's easier to read something you agree with than something you disagree with? Reading, if you see a big article by a couple of King's College PhDs saying this is why COVID denialism is extremely dangerous, and I have an emotional response to that. It'll be like, and I've part of it come, once I've read through it, spent some time, gotten over that initial emotional response, I can look at it and go, it's bullshit. Before that, I think there is a little tiny instant of dread. Say, what if all the things you think are fucking bollocks?
Yeah.
Everything, Did you ever see Alan Moore on the Trans States conference? What he said about the Devil Tarot card?
No, enlighten us.
Right, I'm going to, and you know what? I'd love it if Alan Moore came on and said, "These are actually being plagiarized." I can't do his accent.
Is he alive?
Alan Moore?
Yeah,
of course he's alive.
All right, I don't know who he is. I've never heard of him.
Alan Moore, Watchmen.
Oh, is that the film with the giant blue man?
Yeah.
Have you read the graphic novel?
I've not even seen the movie, no.
V for Vendetta, Watchmen.
I've seen V for Vendetta.
Arguably, he's had an enormous effect on culture in terms of Anonymous, for example, adopted his fucking thing.
Yeah.
Watchmen, Providence is really good if you could get in. He's a writer anyway, essentially. A writer and a magician. And he does this, he makes this, someone asks him if he could speak to the diabolical power of advertising in our society, because he rightly identifies advertising as a kind of magic. It's mind control. It's using symbols to affect our decision making.
Yep.
And he says, if you look at the Devil Tarot card in the Weight Tarot deck, it's encoded there. In the Weight Tarot deck, which is
you're gonna have to explain the Weight Tarot deck now.
Right. Oh, I say Weight. God. This is what is monster.
Was it made? Did Terry Waite design it? Is that why it's called the
Weight? Hold on.
You might have to send Ryan 7.
Right. Okay. So I believe Weight is the it was like the esotericist who sort of came up with this particular tarot deck. He based it off what did he base it off now? He based it off the Solar Busca tarot deck, which is an Italian tarot deck, which was knocking around in Renaissance period. The Solar Busca is really quite hideous to look at if you ever pick one up. It's full of images of child slaughter and fucking there's really curious, odd little sort of things going on with it. And there are theories that it was a tarot deck. It's a tarot deck used by the elite to make divinations regarding the games they play. There's a great book called Game of Saturn, where because there are ideas in magic about how one might achieve immortality, and one of them is to reincarnate within your own family line, and that these elites...
Right.
Yeah. So these elites prepare the children to receive the consciousness of the previous dudes who passed on so they can keep the fucking stuff going on in there. The fact is, these things, these ideas exist, okay? Anyway, I'm digressing. So the Waite Rider Smith deck was basically 3 people coming together. It's seen now that I think it's Pamela Cousin Smith. I can't remember her name exactly, but she was the artist and had a lot of input into it. But it is after the Marseille deck, which is it's a fairly simplistic. It's one I prefer to use, but after that, it's the one that most people are familiar with. Okay, it's a classic. The Rider-Waite tarot deck is the one that most people are familiar with. When they get a tarot deck, it's the Rider-Waite deck. In that deck, the devil is he's sat there and he's got 2 people chained to his throne. They're both wearing loose collars. On his head, he's got a pentagram, but it's not an upright pentagram. It's an inverted pentagram. Okay.
Is that 1 point down and 2 points up, or 2 points up and 1 point down?
It's 1 point down, 4 points up, in essence. Okay, so you know, like the Marilyn Manson one.
Yeah.
Okay, so when a pentagram is the right way up in magical consciousness or magical thinking, it represents earth, air, fire, water, the lower points, and the upmost point is spirit. So matter is ruled by spirit. Essentially, it's all in this pentagram. When it's reversed, it means that spirit is ruled by matter. And what he argues is that we are living in an essentially textbook satanic society, because if anything is true, if you look outside the window, you'll see that matter rules spirit. Spirit is like so low down as not even exist. He puts it really nicely. He's like, you know, the devil represents what happened. If you serve the devil, that is the world of matter, the world of flesh, above spirit, above all costs. Then he's like, you know, you can get, you know, fame, wealth, good health, fast cars, hot chicks. All these things can be yours. You know, work hard, do this, you can make it. Hit the big time, baby.
It's like the temptation of Christ.
Yeah, well, you definitely can go there. However, if you resist against it, then poverty beckons, you know, ill health, you know, all these things are his domain, the domain of the flesh. But this is all the devil can offer and all the devil can take away in the card. And this is the reason why the collars that the 2 people who are chained to them are loose. They can remove them at any point.
Yeah. Oh, but they choose to wear them.
Yeah, it is absolutely beautiful. And he really gets into an accent. I've robbed it of some of its power now. I hope some of you listeners try to ignore that, but listen to Alan Moore at the Trans States Conference. Just put Alan Moore Trans States Conference and watch the whole thing. He's very good at it, but you can see what I mean. It makes perfect.
Absolutely nails it. It goes back to the technocratic metaverse thing. We're gonna choose these things at the end of the day. We're gonna choose. Shut up, slave. Are you gonna be a slave? Well, we're all gonna choose to for convenience.
Yeah,
if we're not careful. Yeah. So that definitely sums it up. One thing I wanted to ask you, because we've got, I think we've gone past an hour. We've gone past an hour already. But something I wanted to ask you was about the pier hat. What was the pier hat? You know, the logo, the hat. It's like a pilgrim hat with an eyeball in the middle. It looks quite esoteric to me.
Right. Very quickly then. So obviously the pier hat, the logo of the music venue that I helped pioneer, came about because we didn't have any idea what to call it for a start, and so we tried the like a sort of cut-up method. We're just flicking through books, and we got pier, we got hat. I was like, oh, we put that in the short list. Pier hat sounds weird, and people go, nah, it sounds like a stupid name for a venue. Maybe it is. However, later on, I discovered, coming back to John Lennon, weirdly, synchronistically enough, I was reading his horrible book, A Spaniard in the Works, and it's that kind of dodgy Lennon territory, you know the kind of Lennon I'm talking. A Spaniard in the Works, whatever, and in it, he refers to the pier head in Liverpool as the pier hat. I was like, thus it must be the pier hat. So I did that. We call it a pier hat. It's what does the pier hat do? It can be, is it a hat a peer wears, like a noble, or does it peer? Let's have a peering hat. there's a peer hat. Let me tell you something else. No, we haven't got any time. Here's another really weird thing about it in terms of like magical synchronicities. We put the peer hat into like fucking Google, as you do, and we came across somebody on eBay was selling a brass peer hat, like PW. I was like, oh right. So someone, and it was the same, exactly the same kind of hat on our logo. We know they're not called peer hats in real life. They're called like, it's like a pilgrim hat. So in other words, we're like, oh wow, somebody's seen our sort of logo, and it's like, and now they think it's called a peer hat and they're selling it. So we bought it. It turns up, and it's a little brass hat. It's really curious because the dimensions are poor, just like our logo. Not poor, that's not fair. Good. The dimensions of the graphic artist did it great. I don't mean the poor. I mean they're unusual compared to how one might conceive of a classic pilgrim's hat, quite tall and narrow. Oh God, cut that bit out in case he sees that. He'll be fucking good.
Yeah, we'll fix that in post.
It's not poor. It's not poor, Michael. It's just long. Anyway, and he looked at the brass hat, and lo and behold, actually underneath it says, it's got stamped in it, peer hat. I was like, how is this fucking possible? Like, and it's like, so there's a place. It says it is a peer hat, like before, and it was, and it says it's like a little time stamp, 1949. Like, how can this be the case? Right. Looked further, and it's like, oh, actually, no, there's something faded off the end of it. It's like it's worn away. There was a company called Peerage, and it's a peerage hat, but he didn't know there was a company called Peerage because the end of age had worn away. Thus, it was a peer hat to him. Thus, we have this fucking magical fucking thing just sitting there. It's like the inevitable victory of the peer hat right there on our shelf, which I think is marvelous. It's just another sign.
The age had faded away.
Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah, there's another thing. Yeah, beautifully put.
Oh, Synchromysticism to the tits.
I know, yeah. What a
it is
wonderful
amazing,
place.
Yeah. So
well, Nick, I've really enjoyed our chat tonight.
I'm sorry if I jabbered.
That's the idea.
Yeah, it's always better when the guest jabbers.
Oh, thank God for that.
Definitely.
So, small mercies then.
Any shout outs or plugs or, other than going to the Peer Hat in Manchester, obviously?
Well, I would plug the Folk Horror Festival this Saturday, but it's basically sold out. It's just kind of a bummer. But,
could people not press their faces against the window from the outside?
They can do that, but in general, I would say, look, what we're trying to avoid are cliques or a place where you're not welcome. Come to the Peer Hat. I will talk to you, and you might regret me talking to you, but I will talk to you. And there'll be other people there. You can make some friends. You might even learn how to build a house.
Oh yes, exactly.
Well, I'll be there then.
Yeah,
so I need help in that regard.
Yeah, you do, don't you?
Well, you're on. We're following you on Instagram. You got an Instagram profile. If people want to follow you there, can't they, Nick?
Well, you can if you like. All I do is post pictures of beautiful landscapes in my phone AI. Kind of I take the photograph. And I'm like, that is not what I took, but fine. It's just sort of like, we thought that you would prefer it like this. It's like
it's that fucking Zuckerberg again, isn't it?
It's bollocks. It is absolute nonsense. Hey, we could even improve on your memories. It's like, I don't want you to improve on them. It's just anyway. They look great for the most part. It's in a flat field in _flat_field. And I do that. You can also, what's my blog called? Black Stage. If you look at put Peer Hat and Black Stage, now probably you'll find it somewhere on blog. You can find it through Facebook, whatever. I post there.
Send me the links. Send me the links, and I'll put them in the show notes if anyone wants to follow you on various places.
And don't do that. Don't be following me. Go fucking, find your bliss. It's like, don't listen to me.
Follow the 3 Delphic maxims, man. Know thyself. And the other 2.
The other 2. Yeah, I can't remember.
Get high, man.
You can't remember the other. Surety brings ruin. And what was the
I don't know.
second one?
It's nice that it looked to me like I would know the Delphic maxims.
Oh, it means everything in moderation. I know that. It's
Everything in
nothing
moderation.
to excess.
There
Know
we go.
thyself, nothing to excess, and surety brings you ruin. Because I know nothing, man.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's the one.
Right.
That's the one.
Stay on the line for us, Nick, while we play ourselves out. And if you're listening on the live stream, hang around for 10 minutes or so. We're going to have a break and then come back for part 2 and do some news.
Yep.
All right. Nice to meet you, Mick. Peace out.
You too.
Ciao.
Take care.
Thanks.